Folks, thank you so much for tuning in. It's a Monday. We're starting off the week, and as you can see, if you're looking on video, not just doing audio, I am live to this morning right now doing media at a live action site. So I'm giving you this podcast right any minute now. I'll be jumping onto a stage and doing some commentary, but I want to get to you first so you get the top stories of the day. So thank you. If there's any traffic noise you might hear in the background, that's the reality of delivering the news on site and up to date. So you've got it right now. Senator Fetterman, the Democrat, as you know, in the U.S., has come out with something pretty alarming. He has fired off a warning to the mayor of New York, of course, our dear friend, Mr. Mamdani, who is really leading the Democrat, or the Socialist of America unit sort of within the Democrat Party and taking it severely left. I'm going to comment on that right after I tell you about what Fetterman has said, because there's just been a ruling from the Supreme Court that some are interpreting as being in favor of what President Trump is doing relative to some immigration issues. He's won a significant ruling, Trump has, and Mayor Mamdani says he will defy the Supreme Court. You can't get, at the risk of sounding political, you can't get much more serious than that. And Senator Fetterman, of course, top leading Democrat, is giving a pretty strong warning about the ramifications of that. So keep that thought in mind as we jump to what's going on, latest update relative to Iran. And it's one of the, as you can see by now, one of the strangest, I guess what you would call ceasefires that you're ever going to hear about, because the ceasefiring has not ceased anything. Battles are waging. And today, again, Washington and Tehran are saying they've agreed they're going to halt military strikes. And because Iran has hit hard some of its neighboring Islamic states, that's got everybody quite worried. Doesn't sound too much like a ceasefire, but both sides now saying, calm down, we really mean it this time, there will be a ceasefire. Well, one area where it's not ceasing fire, it's fascinating how with all of the interesting things going on in the world, the drama around the Lincoln Memorial reflecting pool. Remember, this is it's a beautiful pool. If you've been to Washington, it stretches out. It's called on the Mall from the feet of the Lincoln Monument. And Trump has made that a real focus of getting it cleaned up so it looks good. And there's been ongoing attacks by vandals on the pool to keep it looking dirty. And now two vandals have just been, or they're in pursuit of two vandals to arrest them. They carved a 350-foot gash right into the Lincoln pool. You know, if you've got a swimming pool and if you know what it's like to have a lining around it, it's kind of like that. And they take, what these vandals do is they take knives and they just run it along right the side of the pool. And it's pretty devastating in terms of the damage. So we'll watch for that craziness that's continuing there. On a very positive update, let's take a jump across the pond. The Princess of Wales, she did an amazing thing here. You know, as you know, she had the cancer treatment and the cancer battle that she's been fighting for the last 2 years. And what she did just on the weekend, she climbed, there's something called the Three Peaks Challenge in the UK, where athletes and others who are fit will try and do climb three peaks within 24 hours. She did it. That's actually 23 miles of climbing. That's an elevation of 10,000 feet, over 10,000 feet. And she did that as a shout out and as encouragement to people who get the cancer diagnosis and survivors of cancer. And she's pulling people together saying, folks, we can do this. So Princess Catherine, good for her in terms of what she has accomplished, what she's doing there. Well, on another side, as we see the battle continuing within the Democrat Party, now it's split to the point where there's so-called moderate Democrats who have formed a group and they call themselves the Promise to America group. And as you know, we've been reporting every day about the significantly stronger far left leaning of the Democrat Party in the U.S. And now it's gotten so bad in terms of people turning off voting for and supporting the Democrats, that within the Democrats, it's the Promise to America group, and they're saying, we are capitalist, we are not socialist, we do believe in free markets, we believe in secure borders, we want to see crime being dealt with, so a huge war going on within the Democrat Party, and let's see where it all continues to roll out. Well, a concern that's really gripping people in the U.S., especially in the cyber community, and especially when it comes to the point of view of military capability. As far as back to a year ago, many experts were saying that China's, even their best AI models were way behind the United States. But coverage over the weekend and today are talking about Chinese firms like Z.ai, or Zai, but it's actually spelled Z or Z.ai, and DeepSeek have really closed the gap in terms of advanced chips, in terms of research capabilities, and are really closing in on the U.S. This will be and is a real area of concern, because if a belligerent state, whoever it might be, China or otherwise, gets a really clear edge in terms of in terms of military technology, that is a real risk. If a country has the ability to knock out the U.S.'s radar system, knock out their nuclear systems, and keep their own, like China or any other country, it's a real area of concern. So I'm saying watch for increased funding, increased focus in the U.S. and U.S. allies in terms of this race relative to AI. By the way, somebody within the Democrat Party who is always of interest, Bill Maher, if you watch his show, he's at the point now, and he had Vice President Vance on his show, and on his latest show, and he said he is now really getting concerned with the Democrat Party. He's saying they are obsessed with Israel, they're obsessed with Jew hating, they don't want free markets, they don't like capitalism, they don't want prisons, and he says if this is where the Democrat Party is going, then my vote is in play. So again, a lot of concern going on relative to the Democrat Party. We talked on Friday, we said watch for any announcements coming out of the Fed, the Federal Reserve, who determine and give signals about the interest rate going on. And so the announcements that just came out are reinforcing the message that inflation is still their central concern. And so people who are looking, business investors and policymakers, are now saying that they think another rate hike would be coming this year. So that's this is speculation, but a pretty strong signal that spending is still not under control. And politicians like to point to other forces like the Iran war or a drought or something like that. But remember, and this is what the Federal Reserve is saying, the single greatest pressure for inflation is governments spending borrowed money. Governments increasing their spending and doing it with borrowed money is the single greatest factor that reduces your spending power when you go to the grocery store, when you pay your home maintenance bills, when you're paying your mortgage or your rent. Every time, and this is a nonpartisan statement, every time now with Canada, with its huge rate of debt, and the U.S. also, every time you see or hear a politician promising new spending, and I guarantee you, it's with borrowed money, you can know that the price of groceries is going to get higher for you, the price of everything you buy. So keep that in mind. Well, Canadians are pretty ecstatic over the weekend, as you saw it yesterday. Stephen Eustachio, I hope I pronounced his name right, in the last minute of the game against South Africa, drills a rifle of a shot, wins the game for Canada. Canada, for the first ever now, going into the next level at the World Cup. People over the moon excited about that. Well, talking about Canada, the leader of the Conservative Party, the official opposition in Canada, not very excited about that condo bailout that we talked to you last week, where we saw the Prime Minister going into British Columbia, and there's about 2,200 condos that hadn't been selling because the prices are still too high. And so the Premier Carney and Premier Eby of British Columbia announced the government will just buy them all. Developers were delighted that taxpayers get to pay for all those condos now. And Pierre Poilievre is asking now for an official probe. He's asking for an official probe into why this took place. So let's kind of see, let's keep an eye on that and watch where that might be going. Pretty serious stuff coming out of that particular issue. The, excuse me, as we look today also at the situation around Cuba. As you know, Cuba is failing dramatically financially because as a communist country, they've lost the ability to get their cheap oil from Venezuela, and there's sanctions against Cuba. I've been to Cuba, been there doing mission work, helping farmers in the agricultural and rural areas. I've seen for myself, and this was even a few years ago, the fact that once you get outside of Havana, and few journalists will get outside of Havana, and it is poverty everywhere you go. And they are very close now to telling their own government. The Cubans are saying, we've got to start allowing market forces to take place. We've got to allow Cubans to be back in business, free enterprise, small business, small grocery stores or restaurants, whatever it might be. And so it looks like we're on the verge of seeing some breakthroughs that might give financial freedom and true freedom to the people of Cuba. Kind of alarming that Julio Fonseca, who is co-chair of the Canadian Network on Cuba, that's called the Canadian Network on Cuba. And what's he saying today? He's calling this a siege of the United States against the Cuban people, involving every part of life in Cuba. So Canadians who have always been, so many Canadians unquestioning in terms of rushing to Cuba to do their time on the beach and go to the all-inclusive tourist sites, are now seeing from a so-called Canadian representative who appears to want to see communist activity continue in Cuba. So, folks, I'm pulling for the people of Cuba. I'm hoping that the government is going to relent and allow them to pursue their economic happiness and drop the strong communist policies there. We'll see what has happened. Well, the Supreme Court just ruled against Donald Trump. If you've been following this, he's been involved in a battle with a writer named Jean Carroll. Actually, her official name E, and then the period, and then Jean Carroll. E. Jean Carroll. She was the one, if you remember, accused Trump of abusing her in a women's store. This was back in the 1990s or late in the 1990s. That case has been going on in the courts for years, and the jury has said that he's not, the Supreme Court, it did not say he raped her, but there was sexual abuse, and that he has to pay damages for the way he defamed her. And so that's going to be quite a hit on Donald Trump. He has to pay those damages. I want to just talk for a minute, because with all of the activity in terms of rain and people being in their cottages throughout cottage country, the Medical Association in Canada just released their final report about the 11-year-old boy who, this was 2024, at a cottage in Northern Ontario. You probably remember a very sad story. He woke up, there was a bat from the cottage actually lying on his nose and mouth. It did not appear he had been bitten. He swished it away. The father got rid of the bat, but he came down with symptoms several weeks later. In fact, died of rabies. It is not common. It is rare, but keep in mind that these things can be dangerous. And if you, the thing is, if you don't get a rabies shot, if you've been bitten, it's almost certain you will die. If you do get a rabies shot before the symptoms, it's almost certain you will survive. So please keep that in mind. We just say that as people, with this report just out yesterday, as people head to the cottages especially. Hey, in terms of terminology being used by Gen Z, if you get referred to as being someone who is based, that's B-A-S-E-D, they might say, wow, that person is really based. You're really based. That's actually a compliment. So don't feel bad. It means you're authentic. It means you're confident. It means you stand by your convictions. So they might say, she really stands by her convictions. That's based. So don't be offended if your grandkids refer to you as being based. There is, if you check the National Post, Tristan Hopper has a column there. It's really important to check this out because it's showing conclusively that by recriminalizing certain drugs, that's making certain of these possession of these really dangerous drugs, fentanyl and others. Remember, in British Columbia and in other places, they took away the criminality. They were making free drug sites available, safe sites. Those of us who were complaining about it and who said this is going to lead to an increase in deaths, we got laughed out of the room. We were called dinosaurs. We warned that by making free these drugs dangerous and more accessible, you would see the drug dose over rate and death rate go up, and it has gone up so substantially in the last 3 years that British Columbia indeed has canceled all of that. They have recriminalized some of the most dangerous drugs. They did that not long ago, and already, check that story out, already very significantly, the deaths are dropping. Really shouldn't be a surprise to anybody, but it is a surprise to some, and let's hope governments continue to smarten up. And I will credit the socialist government in BC. It took them a long while. They didn't listen to our warnings at the start, but they've done the right thing now, and already we're seeing overdoses and deaths dropping. The July 1st, as Canadians and Mexicans know, there's some re-announcements coming up relative to the free trade deal with the U.S. My prediction on this is this: if you look what's happening in other jurisdiction, in the U.K., in Japan, in South Korea, what's been happening there is these countries, what they've done is they've simply agreed to lower their tariffs. They've agreed to lower their tariffs, and that's been the single greatest progress they've made. Watch for something, I'm just kind of predicting, watch for something similar in the free trade agreement discussions with Canada, Mexico, and the U.S. As we close out the broadcast today, you may or may not know, June 29th, Christians around the world are celebrating something called the Feast of St. Peter and St. Paul. And so this is acknowledging historically two of the most profound missionaries in church history, going back over 2,000 years. They unfortunately paid dearly with their lives, but two of the most significant Christians, and that's why they're celebrating the Feast of St. Peter and St. Paul. You can think about that today as you enjoy your day. Thanks for tuning in. See you tomorrow.